So we're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 22nd episode of Diversity with Diana podcast. My name is Diana Sifuna. I'm the founder and host. Today in the studio, I am joined with one young, amazing lady. Her name is Shiko Kihika. Wanjiku Kihika, actually, but most of you know her as Shiko Kihika, as she's a social media guru. She is a marketer by all rights. But let me formally introduce her because maybe you know her as a social media influencer, as a human rights defender, but there's more to her than maybe what she exposes on social media. So Shiko Kihika or Wanjiku Kihika is the founder and executive director of Tribeless Youth, a well-governance and arts advocate. We focus our discussion this year on the Saba Saba, its meaning, and our collective duty as watchdogs that ensure that compliance with the Constitution is upheld. Let me talk about Tribeless Youth. Tribeless Youth is an initiative that was established with the purpose of promoting peaceful coexistence among the youth in Kenya, devoid of negative ethnicity or tribal lenses. Additionally, I wish to talk about Shiko. And Shiko is an undergraduate public relations student and concurrently pursuing a certificate in gender and public policy at Harvard Kennedy School of Executive Studies. She completed a transformational leadership training by Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung and another program on place-based leadership for prevention of urban violence from the University of Sunderland in partnership with the Danish Institute. Her impeccable track record has received recognition. She was the first runners-up in the awards, in the Diversity and Inclusion Awards, yay, organized by Daima Trust in partnership with National Cohesion and Integration Commission, that is the NCIC, as well as Integrity Award by Kenya Civil Society Network. She's both a TedX 2019 and an Acumen Fellow. Thank you so much, Shiko, for joining us today. I'm really, really thrilled and just excited to hear what you're going to tell us with your wealth of information, knowledge, exposure, experience, and everything that you've amassed over the time. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Diana. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome.
Finally, we're here.
I know it's been a long time coming. I've always intended to have you, and I was like, I'm going to wait for that big moment that, that is so deserving of Shiko coming over. But I guess today is as good a moment as any. I know we are in a network of a group of young leaders, and I woke up today and I thought, wait a minute, is today Saba Saba? And what is everyone doing? So before we go into Saba Saba, I just wish for you to properly also introduce yourself and tell us what was your personal inspiration that brought you to get into the governance space in the first place. We now want to know who Shiko is, and I see that there's one live viewer, so I'm sure many more will be joining in live, or others will join us tomorrow morning, and we'll see that the viewers will increase. So go on, Shiko, tell us about yourself and how you came into this space.
So I think you said much about me, but my coming into the activism, basically the activism space, was back in 2015 when I met a group of young people who are discussing issues that are affecting the county government, or rather the Nakuru counties through the Nakuru county government. And I found it interesting that young people have actually a lot of interest on issues, corruption, the budget processes and everything. Weirdly, I was the only woman in the sitting. So it was quite interesting because now, funny, by default, I became the organizer. By default, I became the mobilizer. And then I just found myself wanting to know more and more about this country. By then I was working in a supermarket. I won't mention the name though.
Okay.
So I was working in a supermarket by that time. So I think that was my first interaction with activists and wanting to know what they're doing and everything. Then I realized that I had a voice that I've never used. I was always that person in the supermarket who complains when people are told to use the back door. And I remember the first thing I used to tell the manager is that I'm not a lorry, I'm not going back to offload. Why do I have to use that back door? I can use just any door as long as I get in,
Yeah.
But then they say rules are rules and rules ought to be followed. no matter how oppressive they are in such setups. So that is where I started getting my voice, and that is where I actually also quit my job to just do activism full time. So for me, it was not about the money at first. It was about the passion of just getting things done. I was among the team that led the ban of plastic KE in Kenya. With a group of young men and women, we started in a WhatsApp group called Street Nakuru, and we did protests, we did petitions in the county assembly. It was quite a good progress, and just seeing that come to pass for us was just an amazing journey.
Right. Yes, awesome. So I'm literally typing in as I go because I don't have any assistance on this podcast. It has already evolved from being a solo podcast to being a guest and host podcast. So just allow me when I'm typing down to also just take record of what you're saying and what are the things that people should remember.
Okay.
Quitting your job is not an easy thing, especially to get into a space that is not directly linked to how you're going to make your money. Seriously, Shiko, you are a young lady. You found a passion within you that pulled you towards governance, that pulled you towards maybe being that voice of the young people, being the organizer, convener. And now I see you actually commuting from Nairobi to Nakuru County and back to, from Nakuru County to Nairobi and back to Nakuru County. You need to be an inspired person for you to actually be doing that. It's not easy, and I want to acknowledge you for that. And also behind you, I see a whole pile of books. So I want to get to see how you would talk to a younger Shiko and tell that younger Shiko that, by the way, you still have a chance to do whatever you want to do in life before we now get into this governance thing that most people sometimes may not understand. But later on, there's a method to this madness that we start agitating from a very small level, from a very small group, to later now becoming the people that change laws and policies in the country. Yes. Yeah.
So, the most interesting thing is that most people don't know, but I got pregnant at 19. So that basically I was still a teenager. And when going back and revisiting that young self, I think the much I would tell them is that the future is too bright for you to just shut off the world. And the future is too bright for you to not see what it holds for you. Because if you asked me at that point what I wanted to be, I wouldn't know. I was in a very dark space.
Yes.
I didn't know if I had a future anyway. And then here comes 7 years down. My son is 7, almost turning 18. 8. Sorry, I'm rushing him.
Almost turning 8, yes.
Almost turning 8. And then I look back and I'm like, wait a minute, see how much, or rather see how much time this is. See how long 7 years can be, and see how much change this can bring. Because the Shiko in 2014 is not the Shiko right now. And in 2014, I was a young girl, lost. I didn't know. Like, I think the only thing I was thinking is I need to just give birth and figure out some job and just to work to provide. But I did not work because I'm passionate about that.
Yes.
And I look back and I think this goes to so many young girls who are trying to figure out life. Do not pressure yourself. Do not beat yourself over things that you have no control over. Wake up, put up your makeup if you do, smile, and just wait, because the sun sort of comes out bright every day. Why don't you become that sun to your future? Just wake up, shine bright, and go out there and get what you want.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I know your story and I had it from you, and I was actually still very inspired by it. So when I thought about today being Saba Saba, last year in the podcast, I took a chance to do a solo podcast, and I spoke to my audience about what Saba Saba means, what the march meant in 1990 first, what it has evolved to being right now. And I know you are like a guru in this space. You have been part of the social justice movement. Yes, you are. Yeah, better on that. And so I want to give you a chance to now tell this audience in the platform what Saba Saba meant, what it now means, and what it's going to mean in the future, because we are the people to make the change. Yeah.
So I think I always say I want to talk to us, the generation of the 90s and 2000s, the people who might not necessarily know what this means, because we found it happening. We came in, people are voting in for a constitution. We never voted. We didn't necessarily have a voice by then. Some of us
Right.
never even understood what that meant to us as a country. But now we're here, we're living that constitution, and we're living that fight that people did put up at Kamukunji on that specific day. We are living that struggle that those men and women, journalists, activists, about 20 of them or so who died during that time, the struggle they put in, the sacrifice they made to even sacrifice their own lives so that we can be here as a country. So for me, Saba Saba is the day of liberation. It's the day where Kenya, and I like comparing it to the story in the Bible where they say that when guys were praying and seeking Jesus, and the curtains tore into two. I'm not quite good with the Bible, so but I'm thinking that is the story anyway.
Right.
This is it for Kenya. This is our story of the curtains cutting down into two. It's the story of us being able to voice out our stories. It's the same story of us being able to seek for accountability for the monies we pay to the government. It's the story of us finding a voice and a freedom in our opinion. So for me, this is what Saba Saba reflects. And I sit down today and I ask myself, as a young person who benefited from the struggles of these patriots who loved this country so much to sacrifice their lives for it, what am I doing different? What am I doing to make sure that all they fought for does not go to waste?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when I hear what you're saying, I know the Bible a little bit as well. And the curtain being torn into two was when Jesus was dying on the cross. And it is said that now we have a direct access as human beings to have direct communion with God through prayer. So I hear what you're saying, and again, picking up from exactly the same analogy you've used, it's like the story of Kenyans gaining the power to choose their leaders in a democratic manner.
Yep.
And I remember that I actually consulted with you before I chose the topic of this discussion, and you chose alternative leadership options in a democracy. So then this is the point which we dive right in and say, what do we start with? Do we start the current leadership options? Do we start with the existing democracy? Before then we say, what are the alternative options? Because unfortunately, we've been fed with this narrative that we vote for somebody, the person who wins becomes the sole leader for the next 5 years, gets reelected for another 5 years, that makes it 10 years. And then there's like no accountability or repercussion, or even people didn't even know that you can actually recall back your leaders if they are non-performing. So take it away with the topic. The floor is yours.
I think we start with where we are as a democracy. And we are democracy on papers. Things that happen in this country, that we can never say we are democracy, really. Because, and I tell people, democracy is relative. If we're looking at it from the perspective of the Western countries, then we're not even a democracy. We are not even halfway being a democracy.
Yes.
If we look at it from the perspective of the African setup, then Kenya is a democracy. Because we at least have a voice. We at least can use our social medias and say what we want. In some countries, social media is locked. In some countries, they barely even have a voice, So we're at a point whereby the people who fought so much for this democracy are the oppressors right now. So they know the tactics. They know how the civil society world works.
Yes.
And they know that they can tell what the people think.
Yes.
Because these are like human rights turned oppressors at the same time.
Right.
And I'm just thinking, when we're talking about our current leadership, by all means, we have a leadership that does not consult the people. We have a leadership that does not value its people. This cannot be a democratic leadership.
Right.
A good leader is elected to serve. Ours are elected to go steal and command. So
Wow.
those are just like two different ways of looking at leadership in this country. So
Right.
we have, it's very weird that we have someone who gives directions, claiming
Mm-hmm.
or purporting to be helping us shield ourselves from COVID, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time goes against his own directions and hosts a rally with so many people for whatever
Right.
reason. Decides
Right.
that we have these spots, the safari rallies, and then decides that in Naivasha there's no curfew for 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
You all can do what you want. Then all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden you come tell us there's a threat of a third wave of COVID. I didn't even know we hit the second. Where did we hit the second? We've never even gone through phases as a country. How many people have we vaccinated? How many people have we actually tested since COVID first came in?
Right.
So when you listen to that and then listen to the billions of money they talk about in form of loans, in form of grants that are given to Kenyans every day,
Mm-hmm.
you ask yourself, where does all this go? Where does this money go? Because as a person, I cannot access any government services at this point. You
Mm-hmm.
go to hospitals and people are sharing beds, and you're like, wait, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but you have people sleeping like two of them in a bed. If you have
Mm-hmm.
kids, so it will be like four souls in one bed, and hospital beds are
Wow.
barely even a 3x5,
Mm-hmm.
or 3x6 rather. So I just think we currently don't have any kind of leadership. We are living in a neo-colonialism kind of era
Mm-hmm.
where we sent away the white man so that we can be colonized by one of our own. So I
Wow.
think that is basically what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah, it's a legitimate feeling that you have there, and I have had problems with this leadership, right from the point when was it actually when our president one time went on national television, and I think he had actually convened a group of how do you call them, a group of journalists. And
Mhm.
respectfully, I want to say this with respect, but it was my feeling and it is legitimate. And thankfully, we do have some form of functioning democracy here with the freedom of speech. But I just remember hearing our president say, Munataka nifanye nini? And it
I
was in
know.
line to corruption and impunity. And I was like, what do you mean?
If
At
you're helpless, who are
point,
we?
at what point does this disempower you as a leader not
Mm,
to exercise your authority and take charge of the country that you've been elected to lead, such
mhm.
that your people are running rampant with different scandals after scandals after scandals? I mean, honestly, for me, that was a very weak comment. And to me, I do not know how many other instances that Kenyans will remember as being one of the weakest in this regime. But for me, that comment, that
That was
very
it. I
comment
think,
was the
and I
weakest
think
for
that
me.
was the beginning of sort of him showing us how weak he is as a leader. Because recently, just a few months ago,
Right.
again, he just like underestimated his seat and his office by
Mhm.
gathering. And this for me was weird, and I don't know. I just like think some things that really hurt me is seeing someone who's supposed to be a symbol of unity speaking to
Mhm.
one community as if they were elected by one community,
Yeah.
where he gathered all Kikuyu radio stations one morning and just decided to tell us how his government loses 2 billion every day. So you're
Yeah.
telling us people who are sleeping hungry, a youth who cannot even afford medical services, school fees, food, rent, the basics. You're telling us that your government is losing 2 billion shillings every single day.
Yeah.
So then what are we supposed to do with that information? You're the president, for God's sake. So if you tell me that, what am I supposed to do with that information?
Right.
So it's really sad.
I agree with you. I mean, to be honest, I saw that trending, and I think social media seems to maybe, and you're the expert on social media to tell us how this information is being disseminated and it's
Mm.
being passed on to us, but it is being washed down like a very shallow or simple thing.
Yep.
Losing 2 billion shillings daily, and it's something that should actually, in the past, it would have agitated so many people and we would have been on the streets. But what we ended up doing is making a mockery out of it, making it seem like it's such a light thing that I'm beginning to wonder. But remember, we want to talk about the integrity of the Constitution and Saba Saba and what it meant to people. I see that we're having more people tuning in live. Thank you, Wilkista. I see also Bina Maseno has tuned in. Thank you guys for tuning in. I want to bring the conversation just back slightly to Saba Saba. Its meaning about preserving the integrity of the Constitution, especially when the human rights started being abused by the leadership and by certain machineries or organs within the leadership, so to speak, from way back when to now where we are, where I do not know whether we have a credibility in terms of holding our leaders accountable towards implementing the Constitution, and then looking at the democracy. So you've challenged the democracy quite a bit. Then we'll go to what alternative options do we have? Do people know that we can actually recall our MPs? Do they know that we can recall our leaders if they fail to be able to deliver within what they are required to do? Yes.
So my thinking,
Yes.
We are quite an interesting country, and let me tell you, we have quite a very interesting generation also.
Yeah. Yes.
There's a huge gap between the generation that fought for Saba Saba and the actual generation that is living, or rather benefiting from the fruits right now.
Yes.
The generation that fought for Saba Saba did not have smartphones. Their way was always the highway. They did not have phones. They used mails that took like forever to deliver messages and everything, right?
Right.
So these people, their way was the streets. Their way was to get heard no matter what. Their way was coming from a point of, we've tested the pain that our forefathers tested, or rather the pain that our forefathers lived.
Yes.
And we don't want to go back there. Then we have the us generation who did not test the pain of our forefathers.
Right.
Who have not been told the correct history of this country.
Right.
Because the history we read in school is basically glorifying most of the oppressors. So we must acknowledge that we have never sat down and told our history the way it should be told.
I agree with you 100%.
There's a huge gap between these generations and our generation. I call it the meme master generation, where anything you say can be turned into a meme ASAP, and it will go viral, and we laugh about it. And after laughing about it, we move on. So you're telling this generation that has never even been paid 10,000 bob in their first job, that still needs to struggle in terms of like, you're telling a generation that if they're looking for a job right now, they're being told you need 10 years experience, yet you're a fresh graduate. You're telling them to understand how much 2 billion means to them.
Yes.
This generation does not know a story of good services. This generation does not know a story of better Kenya than the one they're living right now.
Yes.
So they do not know where Kenya came from, and they do not know where Kenya is going. They are living, they're just flowing by the day. So what does this tell you? We have a generation that is very much disconnected, that the only thing they know is that the oppression is the norm. This is how we were born, and this is how we live. Because remember, our parents, every time we wanted to be vocal, they used to tell us, you do not answer back.
Right.
What were you supposed to do? Suppress your emotions. Every time you wanted to say, no, I cannot do this, you were told, no, I have said it is what it is. You need to move. So how do you expect that now this generation is able to speak via their keyboards where nobody knows who's behind the keyboard? How do you expect they'll be responsible with what they put out there? So
and I hear what you
say. How to do that.
They were not taught how to do that. But then what is the opportunity that lies within the situation that we find ourselves in? Because I tend to think that in my own little way, this is the smallest effort I can make. And surely if I'm inspired more, I could do more. And by doing more means that we start changing the narrative. I like what Chimamanda Adichie does in her speaking engagements when she talks about, one of the most prolific things I've heard from her is the story of the danger of a single story, and who tells the story and how that then frames the thinking of a whole entire society. Of course, when we are put through the education system, we are given these narratives of what happened and how industrialization came about and this and that. But let me tell you, that is still a single story. How about we hear from the different perspectives? And there comes in our need to sit back with the older generation and start documenting some of the tales they tell us. Of course, it won't be accurate, but it will be at least a beginning, right?
Yeah. And I agree
Beginning to
with
start
you.
telling a different story. Yes, Shiko.
I agree with you because one of the things that we are very big at Tribeless Youth is storytelling, where we go look back at those elderly people. And I tell people, once your grandma is gone, you'll never get another grandma to narrate her story the way she would have done it.
Right.
Even if her daughters or her sons will tell you, it will not be as accurate as she would have put it.
Yes.
So for me, it's about documenting these stories, no matter how inaccurate they are. Get them from
Right.
the diverse languages they'll speak. Get them in
Right.
Kikuyu, Luo, Luya, Kisi, Meru, all these. Get all these stories. Then let us figure out how to translate all these in a language that every common person will understand.
Yes.
That way, then we will find where we will start finding our bearing back to life.
Yes.
I keep asking this question. There's always a narrative that Mau Maus were Kikuyus. There's always a bigger question. Who told us that only Kikuyus fought for freedom?
Right.
Because it's a lie. But that is what our books feed us. That is what our books are for kids. That is why even to date, if you're told Kikuyus are not as many as Luyas or any other tribe, it will be an issue.
Right.
Because it is just that the way you said it, the person who tells the story and how it's told shapes how an entire community thinks.
Right, right. I agree with you. And so that brings us to, I like the fact that you're saying Tribeless Youth tell story, and maybe it's stories. And maybe this is like that opportunity now at this discussion for you to tell us exactly Tribeless Youth and what exactly you do there on a daily basis. Because it's very good for people to know what convenings, what community-based organizations are there, what NGOs are there, even outside Nairobi, that are actually working towards changing the narrative that we've been fed by local and also foreign impunity advocates, to put it lightly.
I know, right? So at Tribeless Youth, we do a lot of stuff. We do a lot of advocacy work, but we are trying to change the narrative. We are trying to move from how things were done 50, 20, 10 years ago. We are trying to create a community that speaks about these issues through different channels. So we work very much with creatives, and that is the better part of being a Tribeless Youth, because we necessarily don't even have titles. It's always a space where creatives can come, open up, shape content, shape programs themselves in the best way they understand how to communicate to their audience. And most people ask me why art, and my answer is always, we've been taught by our mainstream civil society that if I come to your forum, Diana, you better have reimbursement for me. I need my fare back home. And the bigger question that I keep asking is, why do I need to pay you to teach you or to give you knowledge?
Right.
So what we do is we say, if I'm going for a poetry or music gig, I never ask anyone to reimburse my fare. I'll pay for the gig. I'll use my transport. I'll go buy food and drinks. But I'll never ask anyone to reimburse all that, right? So this is it. We are giving people a gig for free.
Yes.
But then you're coming to learn as well. So in between the gigs, you can always have those panel discussions. In between the gigs, you can always have a Twitter-thon. In between the gigs, you can always have different competitions. But our main aim is to have an educative session through these pieces of art that young people really relate to. So I think that is how I can summarize what we do. So we are a youth-led and youth-serving organization.
Right.
So we are just like looking at expanding the space of creativity in terms of dealing with our problems.
Right, right. And I've seen the work that Tribeless Youth have done over the years, and it's really inspiring to see that you use the offline and as well as the online tools to tell stories. And I think for me, my favorite series that you and your team have done were the YouTube videos, the puppet, was it the puppet show? The puppet show.
Yeah.
And just speaking about police brutality, but in a comical yet very informative manner. What inspired that series? And I think I'll link it in this podcast so that people can get to watch it. But I think it's how you just, in a very sophisticated yet very simple manner, communicate what happens in reality when you're dealing with law enforcement in Kenya.
So the police brutality video actually came out when COVID started. If you remember, Diana, what happened is we were told stay at home, don't go to work. There's a curfew, so wear your masks. And then from nowhere, the cops started harassing people.
Extremely, and killing young people as well.
Exactly. So for us, we felt like we have militarized the disease. Instead of looking at it from a form of this is a disease and we all need to be on the same table to sort of figure this out, we militarized it, where so many young people died. And to date, we've never seen anyone accountable for that. So many young people had to pay bribes because you've been arrested for a reason you don't know. Right. And one thing I think even you see in the video is that the cops arrest you, but they don't have masks on.
Right.
Or they arrest you and put you in a lorry full of people, yet you've been told to social distance.
Right.
So for us, it was like, how do we put out this? Because this for me was like an interesting space. I was like, how do we put out this for people to actually get the message, but also reflect on who we are as a people? And the one thing that came to mind was that we have puppeteers, we have animators, and we have cartoonists. How do we work with all of them to make sure this content looks coordinated, but at the same time is content that all of us can own? So for us, we always have stages of our production, and we start from the staff meeting and then a brainstorm meeting with the creatives. From the brainstorm meeting, there's the scripting that is done by almost everyone, just people putting out their input on what they think. And then we have another brainstorm to share the scripting, and then now the production. This is run by young people. That is the most amazing thing. The fact that all this is like young minds who are able to put out these pieces and be able to like actually be very coordinated to the end. So for me, it's one thing that I say, it actually challenges this narrative that people keep saying that the youth are ignorant, that the youth are lazy. I see this youth put in work to make sure this happens. Them streaming a whole script that should have been 30 minutes, 1 hour to 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute is a lot of work. So just seeing that, and that's where I see the much hope we have with our young people.
I am happy that you say that the whole team that does the program from inception to completion, production, scripting, all this, and then finally editing it and compressing it to a 3-minute video. I did a bit of production, and I know how much work that takes. And that just tells us how the potential of the young people within the economy to even explore other creative ways of earning an income, which is an industry that is not well supported, but that's not what we're going to talk about here. I know we've spoken a lot about the democracy in the Kenyan context, the leadership that we have. So what are the alternatives, Shiko? What are the alternatives now? Let's get to the final bit of this discussion. That is to propose an alternative that may work.
That is the most interesting bit, Diana.
Yes.
Knowing that we have our young people who are the majority, who can have a voice and create their own system of leadership.
Yes.
What I see right now is what we had before 2002. The young people, the Orengos, and the likes who by then were really young, that were really fighting for something,
Yes.
Now we have this generation of young people. Then imagine sitting down and imagining we have a generation of almost 6,000 no, 6 million, sorry, new
Right.
voters. Like these are new voters. They've never voted. They've not done anything. Yet we've
Wow.
had this other generation of our youth that probably are first-time voters or second-time voters, a maximum, right?
Yes. Yes.
This is a whole block.
Yes.
Yet this is the most oppressed. So I see this as a risk and as an opportunity at the same time. These people, if well tapped into, they can change the narrative of leadership in this country.
Right.
If well tapped into, we can start seeing accountability from all levels. If well tapped into, then we can define what leadership means. If well tapped into, we can defend the Constitution too.
Right, right. And so what are those the small steps that a young person should take? Because one of the things I've had from other international organizations and also just the young people themselves, because I emerged from student leadership and I was being told about this right to do this. And once you hold your ID, you're going to be able to do this. You're going to be able to get even the HELP loan from the government and so on and so forth. But nobody really told us the script of how to actually get there and how there is strength in numbers, unless you are the Orengos that you just mentioned, who did political science degrees at the University of Nairobi. Not every young person will do a political science degree in University of Nairobi. Certainly not everyone will go to that university. So how, in our own little ways, are we going to ensure that the 6 million of us who are young, entering the voting age in the last 5 years, the voting block, the voting group in the last 5 years, how will those 6 million of us young people be able to know that we can actually mobilize, organize, and then go out there and then start making change?
So one thing I say most is that elections in Kenya has always been a scam. It has always been like a silly people's festival where idiots come together, we wake up at 3 a.m., we go vote. It's like that day we don't work and we don't do anything else. It's just voting, right? And then for the next 3 days, we also don't open our shops or anything because we are waiting for the results so that we determine if we are going into war or not.
Yes. Yes.
You know, so we just exercise our stupidity openly every 5 years.
I mean, that's harsh, but go on.
and then come back to complain for the next 5 years, then do the same process again, you know. And the worst bit is that we do all things, but we don't learn. Right now, if you go on social media, we are split between the same thugs that we've been complaining about for the last 5 years. We do not want to look beyond that cocoon because, those people don't have money. Yeah, and this narrative is always weird. Tuchague mtu mwenye ako na pesa hataiba sana. Wewe mwenye ako na pesa hataiba zile kubwa kubwa. We've seen that with the Kenyatas, you know.
Right.
And we do not want to think beyond that box. We do not want to be told that actually we can get someone else who can be at this place, right? But then the hope is that how far we've been oppressed, the people suffering are the youth. We are the people who earn 20,000 shillings, but now the gas is at 2,500 for the 13 kg. Your tokens are going high. Your Safaricom airtime is going high by 20%. The M-Shwari, Tala loans, and all these things that you survive on are going high by another 20%. So what does this mean to you? It means that you're doomed. You're living in a country that does not like you or love you, in a leadership that does not care about you. So this is the time where, Diana, we start picking our pieces and saying, we need to teach our people how to vote and why they vote. Because if I asked a younger Diana, why did you first vote? We had no reason. I didn't know why I voted. I voted because my parents told me if I don't vote, I won't come back in that house. That is the reason why I voted. But did I know that this defined if I'm going to access help? Did I know if this defined if I'm going to be able to access the higher education, jobs, and other services? No. Now I'm here, I actually understand that one decision is what is causing me all this pain. So if we start relating that single vote, that single day to our struggles for the next 5 years, then we are able to start changing the narrative. We are able to start saying, because we must learn to meet these people at their points of struggles.
Right.
We must learn to relate their problems to that one single day when they wake up very early to go make that mistake.
Right.
Yeah.
I like how you're saying it, because I've seen other civil society organizations, when implementing this civic engagement and civic education exercises, telling especially the youthful population to maybe consider that bribe they were given by a leader or a prospective leader, a candidate, so to speak, to maybe cost it over the period of 5 years and see whether that decision was truly worth it. That 500 shillings that you were given while you're in the queue, that collective, let's say at most you are receiving 500 today, 1,000 tomorrow, another 5,000, another 2,000, whatever. You put that together and let's just say you got 5,000 shillings. You were very lucky, you were very active, you got 5,000 shillings. Now, divide that by the 5 years that this person is going to be in power. So you have 1,000 shillings a year. Now divide that by 12 months. Then divide that by 7 days a week, by 4 weeks and then days. How much is that to you? Was that decision?
And also divide that by the 24 hours you live every day.
Right. Yeah. It comes down to it not being worth it. It comes down to you making a decision, not because you have a selfish, very myopic benefit to gain, but rather you make a decision that will help progress the community, give you access to public services, good roads, access to water and sanitation, access to good schools, the education system, the healthcare system. Look at what COVID did to, was it the Meru governor who got COVID, and he actually penned down a whole emotional rant about this and that, and his panic of what would have happened if he actually succumbed to the disease. We're glad he didn't succumb to the disease. But just to tell you that it didn't really take COVID for you to realize that healthcare and other public services should be prioritized. Did it take COVID for the president to now, I saw the trending hashtag this morning was Uhuru overworking, and I see that he's busy visiting hospitals and launching this and that.
He was launching hospitals at night. And I was like, can we just be honest? Is he overworking? Was he even working before? So how do you just can you just admit that you're going there at night because no one will ambush you, no one will bash you off? Just with the same, the fear of your community, the people you called your stronghold, booing you off during the day, But it's quite interesting where the civil society says it speaks for the people. The civil society says it works with the people. I belong to that circle, but with all due respect, we have no influence with the people we say we serve.
Right.
Maybe it's time we reflect on how we implement our programs. Maybe it's time we stop doing boardroom decisions on what are the problems that are affecting people and sit down with them, let them identify their own problems and identify their own solutions. Our work should be to facilitate the process.
Right.
Because the moment we decide this is the problem, and the moment we decide we are the people who owe these people the solutions, then why do we have the government? What is the role of the government? These people do not pay their taxes to the civil society.
Right.
We should teach them to ask for services from where they pay their taxes to. So maybe the chunk of work we should be doing is capacity building them to be able to identify their own problems and keep the people they elect accountable. Because if an MCA comes to you and tells you they'll build you a hospital, that one is an X. That's a red flag.
Right.
You do not. How will they do it? From which money?
Exactly. They do not understand their JD. That's what some of us in the private sector would actually tell them. They don't understand
why they're even elected. They didn't understand why they're going into that specific seat. So maybe it's time we start teaching our people that, what, in the language you understand most. If I speak to you in Luya, that is what we'll understand. Can we go and speak to Diana in Luya and tell her this is what it is? And one amazing thing that I learned with my grandma is that my grandma is in her late 90s. So we're just having a conversation. And my grandma says that she's tired because she was promised money after her husband died during the Mau, but they've never been compensated. And I asked her, so who promised you this money? And he said the MCA told them they will be able to access these monies.
Wow.
And I'm like, the MCA works with the county government. This was a national government
issue, yes.
So where do the two come in? But then I realized our people don't know. And unfortunately, they buy into just anything. They're the same people who are busy telling us an MCA, MP, senator, governor, these people don't need degrees to get into power. But you as a young woman, Diana, you need even a master's to get a job paying you 30,000 shillings. So why do we need someone handling my taxes in billions, not able to even understand how to manage these monies?
Yeah.
Like, I think we should even have a school where by 6 months after they are elected, they go to a mandatory school where they are taught this is what you do.
Apparently, I think after being elected, legislators are required to be taken through some form of
the Kenya school, from the Kenya School of Governance, something.
Right.
But how effective is it? Then we should even disband that thing. It's just consuming our taxes. At least we've not seen one person who's come out of there and we've said, yeah, finally this one is doing. So we just end up in the same circle, and it's really unfortunate. But I just sort of also believe that there's a light coming, and not to be rude, not to be harsh, but all these people oppressing us might not be there 10, 15 years from now.
I agree with you. Actually, I do agree with you 100% when I know that, the natural forces of the nature, Mother Nature, the laws of justice will come to play. And I think we just let the jungle, we let
no matter how much they feel like they own this space. The most amazing thing to realize that nobody lives forever. If it is taking them COVID to be scared enough to know that we do not have health systems, why didn't they care when common people were dying every day?
Yes.
No, it was their scare because they could not fly out to seek treatment via your taxes. So you're there funding a whole plane, like a plane, first class, hospitals on their private rooms abroad. Well, you cannot even access Panadols at your local dispensary.
Right.
So that is one thing we need to think about. And it's one thing I keep telling people. If your MP, your MCA, your governor is driving big cars, living large, and you cannot afford your rent, he's the one eating your rent. Keep him or her accountable.
Precisely. I think one of the biggest takeaways is like what I've just sort of paraphrased from what you said earlier, and you've repeated it now, is that the potential to have change in Kenya is within the vast youthful population. And therefore, then as civil society, in as much as our duty and our role is just to be the citizen watchdog, to tell the people to read the Constitution and understand what powers they have within this Constitution, then to hold their leaders to account. It's also to just be patient and wait for change to happen as well. I think change in a society doesn't take place in a day or two, a year. It takes many, many years. But the good thing is that we can start agitating within our small networks, within our small spaces, and also using the youthful population as the tool to drive change. Thank you, Shiko. We've talked about so much. I'm hoping people will learn something from this conversation we've had.
I hope so too.
It's been by far, I think, one of my easiest podcasts. I didn't even over-prepare for it because last year I did a piece about Saba Saba, March for Our Lives. But then this year we saw, it wasn't so much highlighted in detail. We sort of were waiting for everybody to do something. And maybe that's the potential that next year, how about we as youth serving organizations come together and do something substantive that will ensure that we are maintaining the integrity of the Constitution, and also just remembering what happened on on July the 7th in 1990. I wish to give you some minutes to talk about any closing remarks that you think I haven't asked you, I haven't brought it up. It is something critical in line with our topic of today's discussion.
I think we've almost exhausted everything, but I would want to say in regards to your last point on us waiting for people to do, I think we will only liberate this country when all of us feel the pinch, when we stop waiting. Because the biggest struggle has been people go to the streets, but they're only a certain group of people. That shows us that the other population is not even feeling pinched by this.
Right.
Today, a group of young men and women went to the streets in Nairobi. They were tear gassed, arrested. I'm hoping nobody was injured. But this is a show that we've never, ever achieved a democracy. We have not achieved the leadership that can listen to us. It is up to us to figure out and to know. And this is something I keep repeating, and I will repeat till the last days of this life, that if you're sleeping hungry, you must hold the people you elected accountable. If you do not have rent to pay your rent and you're in the verge of being evicted, hold the people you elected accountable. If you do not have a job and you do not seem to find one, the Constitution allows you to hold those people accountable.
Right.
If you do not afford health services, now that I see they're coming for us with NHIF and wanting to tell us that every member of your household should pay a certain amount by the end of the year, can they equate that to better services? Can they equate that to us accessing free medicines in hospital, free treatments at the same time? It cannot be one-sided. If you're paying tax, whether you're filing nil returns, you always pay 16% of your tax, and now you'll be paying 20% on everything else. So
can you imagine that? Yeah.
If today you're spending your money on anything, you're already a taxpayer.
You're a taxpayer.
You need to hold someone accountable, because you're giving out your money for free and then you're left struggling. It does not make sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to say thank you so much. You have been an amazing guest. It's been an easy discussion. You've given us a lot of knowledge, information that we can actually follow through, see what we can do in our own ways. I wish you all the best in your studies. I am immensely so proud of you as always. And I look forward to having you more again. And to be honest, we are going to have to mobilize and do something incredible, especially knowing that next year is going to be an elections year. Let's help the young people make informed decisions. That would only be something we can do. So thank you so much and have a good night. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you for having me, and have a good night. Bye.
Thank you as well. And thank you to Wilkista, Bina, Winnie for not only tuning in, but also leaving a comment while we continue to the broadcast. Asante, good night.
Good night, Diana. Thank you.
Good night.